In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White. I'm your host, Charles King, and tonight I'd like to start with our Black History Reflection before introducing our guests. Our Black History Reflection is about Roy Clay Sr. Roy Clay Sr. stands as one of the most consequential yet under-recognized innovators in American history, a man whose brilliance helped shape the technological world we now take for granted. Born in 1929 in segregated Missouri, Clay grew up in a society determined to limit his possibilities, but he refused to inherit those limitations. He became a mathematician, a programmer, and ultimately one of the founding architects of Silicon Valley. At Hewlett-Packard, Clay led the team that developed the EP2116A, one of the earliest mini computers ever produced. His leadership helped launch HP's computer division, laying the groundwork for the modern tech industry. Clay later founded RODL Electronics, designing electrical safety testing systems used by every major U.S. tech manufacturer, a quiet empire built on precision, innovation, and uncompromising excellence. Perhaps his greatest legacy is what he modeled, that Black brilliance is not accidental, it is foundational. That Black leadership is not peripheral, it is structural. That when we build institutions, we build futures. Tonight, as we speak with a leader shaping municipal systems, community outcomes, and future of local governance, we honor Roy Clay Sr., a man who proved that when Black excellence is institutionalized, it becomes unstoppable. Now, let me introduce our guest for tonight. Family, tonight we step into a conversation about leadership. Not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that builds systems, strengthens communities, and ensures that everyday people feel the impact of good governance. This is America in Black and White, where we examine the structures that shape our lives and the leaders who are bold enough to prove them. Local government is where democracy becomes real. It's where policy meets pavement, where budgets become services, and where leadership becomes lived experience. And tonight's guest is a man who understands that better than most. Derrick C. Turner, Assistant City Manager for the City of Tucker, Georgia, is a strategist, a systems builder, and a public servant whose work is rooted in transparency, accountability, and community trust. From Fulton County to Lawrenceville to Franklin County, he has built a career defined by operational excellence and measurable results. He has secured distinguished budget awards, led process improvements, advised municipalities, and helped align government operations with the needs and values of the people they serve. Tonight, we explore his journey, his philosophy, and the work required to build communities that thrive not by accident, but by design. Welcome to episode 54. Welcome to the conversation, and welcome Derrick C. Turner to the show. Hello, sir.
Good evening. How are you?
I am just excellent. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
Oh, there's no complaints from me. I'm doing very well. Glad to see you again.
Sir, welcome back. Is
Absolutely.
there anything you'd like to say to the audience before we get into the show?
Yeah, just glad to be back. I mean, a wonderful podcast to be a part of and be associated to, and I really hope that through conversations like these, we're really able to produce leaders. We're really able to just promote local governance. It's such an important thing that people are a little bit afraid of nowadays with the political climate. But something that I think is just super important because it's where it is where rubber meets the road. It's where everything starts and ends. It's your school boards, it's your local government. They're the ones that really control a lot of these things. And if you disregard those, then you never know who's going to step into those. So I think for everyone out in the audience, why not you?
There you go. I definitely appreciate that. And as I get into the show, what I like to do is I want to start with, having people to get the opportunity to get to learn a little bit more about who Derrick was before you became the person that you are now.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us who was Derrick before the titles, the leadership roles, and the public recognition?
I was just a shy little boy from West Tennessee, from Martin, Tennessee, that grew up in an agricultural community. When I left being in West Tennessee, going to college in Tennessee State, I think that's really where I was able to blossom. Shout out to all the HBCUs out there. And I think that was just an opportunity for me to really step into my first roles in leadership, being at Tennessee State, being student manager for the cafeteria. It was one of those opportunities that led me down the path to my career and has really shaped a lot of who I am now. But I'm always still that country boy at heart. And just look back on those times. It was a different day and age, but you just roll with the times and you continue to grow.
What early experiences shaped your understanding of service and community?
Yeah, I think a lot of that started with the church, to be honest with you. So growing up in the church, and I know a lot of us grew up in the church and going, and your parents and grandparents make you go, but eventually to where I started playing piano for my church there in West Tennessee, and that's a gift of love because it wasn't a paid gig for those many years. It's one of those to where you're doing this to really be able to help others. And I think that's where it first started, is learning that is that, you're not always doing things for your own gain or for your own benefit. You're doing things to try to help others in as many ways as you possibly can. So I think that was my first experience.
So, growing up, what did leadership look like in your household or neighborhood?
Yeah, so definitely household. My dad was the boss. He was the bosses of bosses. So he was also a manager. So he finished his career as a plant manager for Goodyear. But he was definitely the person in charge. He had 9 brothers and sisters, and even though he was not the oldest, he was the boss. So starting with him, being able to learn how to lead in that way. I mean, I don't think I learned to lead and say it the same kind of way. He was a little more iron fisted in between my brothers and the rest of the family, but at least understanding how do you lead, whenever people are looking to you, though you have to answer the call. And I think that was the big thing I learned from Dad.
When you think about those at that time, I'm not sure exactly how old you are, but I know that when I was coming up as a young kid, the neighborhood actually raised the kids. And
Yeah.
so, with that kind of rearing, with that kind of community development, with that
Mhm.
kind of community, unity, was that something that was instilled in you that you learned from that helped you develop to become the great leader that you are?
I think so. And I think even for my age, I'm not quite old. I'm still under 50, just barely under 50. But but even with that, it's one of those where yeah, the community really did help you to grow. So whether it be your neighborhood and people looking out for whatever you're doing in your own neighborhood, or just sort of that sort of church group, the people that you're around, or the school group, the parents of all the other kids. I think everybody really looked out for one another and just tried to make sure that, if I see Derrick's doing something wrong, not only am I going to handle it, but I'm also going to call your parents, and they're going to probably handle it on top of me too. So, it was a little bit of a different time, to where there was more community involvement. You knew your neighbors versus, I think nowadays it's a little bit of a rush. You see people pull into their driveways, open up their garage, and it's almost like they're speeding to get into the garage to let the garage down, because they don't want to have to, wave hi to somebody, or they don't want to have to speak to somebody, and I do try to develop some sense of community even within my neighborhood, just by, while it's good weather, walking, speaking to people when I'm out, try to get to know a few people. But yeah, back in the day, absolutely, there was no such thing as you didn't wave to somebody you passed by, and that's how connected you were.
So, what was some of the things that you could take away from that time to give you your sense of community?
Yeah, I think for back in that time, it was really about looking to the elders, at that time frame. You had that certain set of elders. They were the people that were going to speak. My job was not to speak. And being and being in that type of community and you growing up, I think that's an important asset to learn. Is sometimes we are a little bit too quick to speak and we don't want to listen, but when you're in that type of community and you are pulling back and you're just listening, you're going to learn so much just from sitting and listening to somebody else, because at that point you're talking about elders that are 60, 70, 80, that are speaking on their experience, and being in your teens and whatnot. They've already lived a whole life, so being able to listen to what they're saying, and granted, at those ages you listen to older people and you're like, oh, whatever, I'm young and you're old and this, that, but you do still look back on those things. And as you do come up, you get those small realizations as you go through life experiences that say, wow, they were actually right about what they were talking about. And I think that's really how you build community in those situations, and how you get that sense of community is everybody really being in it together. All those different age ranges bring different levels of experience, different levels of wisdom and knowledge, that no matter what age you are, you can still pick up from that. Older people today can pick up from the knowledge of how do I use electronics, different types of electronics, and younger people can pick up on the knowledge of what was it like back in the day. And even being in those mid ranges, you're still getting the best of both of those worlds. So you're still experiencing some of the younger things, but you are beginning to be in that aging community to where, you need to know what to expect. So you can still look to those elders. And that's how you build that community, is you have all age ranges that are all together, that are interacting. And I think for me, that was a big sense of community, is being able to be around all the different age ranges, and just getting a chance to learn and discuss.
When did you first realize you were drawn to public service?
I think for me, really, I think it was probably midway through my working career. So getting to the mid 2010s, was when I realized that I really wanted to be in that. With my mom being a school teacher, she, for her career for 27 years, of course, she was in public service, and I really wanted to venture into that and just try to see if that was something that posed a little bit more interest to me, and being able to serve. And you want to be able to go home at the end of the day and really feel like you've contributed and that you've done everything you can for your relative community, whether it be the community you work for, the community you live in. And I know that everybody does still get some level of reward from whatever type of work they may do. But I wanted a little bit more, and something a little bit more personal, that I could, physically reach out and touch someone, and you see immediately how you've helped somebody when you're in public service.
Who were the mentors who helped shape your path?
Yeah, I think there's a few of them out there. I think especially as I came up in the private sector, I had a boss that really allowed me to grow. And I think the probably similarity between all those bosses I've had that have helped me to really grow into what I am is they're not micromanagers. They're people that see the potential in you, in me in this case, and they really allow me to use the skills that I have to be creative, They don't put limits on what I can do. You're not limited in those cases by title. I think a great mentor that I had being at the city of Lawrenceville, Keith Lee and Steve North, were great for me there, especially, and that really helped to launch me to where I'm at today. Is, I wasn't limited by title. I was able to really do a variety of different things within the organization that, probably anybody else, they wouldn't have necessarily let them do that volume of things because they're not in your job description, is what a lot of people will say. But, if I had ideas, they were very willing to entertain those ideas and let me see them through to bring them to city management and bring them to fruition.
So, what values from your upbringing still guide your work today?
Yeah, I think being honest, your integrity. I think the value of hard work. Both of my parents grew up on farms, so I think especially that because you had to get up and earn what you ate back in that day. But I think those are just a few of the core values that I've carried with me always, because you want to be as honest, as caring as you can be, empathetic to your employees, because everybody's going through something, and you don't want to just simply judge things by the rules only. There's going to be scenarios where if you know your people and you talk to your people, when somebody's kind of having an off day, to pull them to the side. And I tell my staff even now, I can look at you and tell when you're having an off day. I don't even need to hear you talk. And I think those things are important to really be relatable and personable with your staff, just so that everybody can get along, number one, but we can get the best out of each other in the workplace. But I think those are some of the core values.
So, as you mentioned that you went to an HBCU.
Yeah.
Tell us, what was your life experience like growing up on the campus at Tennessee State University?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing for me was a little bit of culture shock, because growing up in West Tennessee, in rural West Tennessee, it definitely was not a lot of people that looked like me. So going from that to going to Tennessee State, being an HBCU, a culture shock, but it was a great thing though, because it was just a different viewpoint that I was able to get. And it was something that, just being in that type of environment, being on campus, even if I walk on campus today, even, getting to a certain amount of years later, I won't say how many years, but it gets to where, you think you just walk on campus and you can just feel the electricity always. So, it's one of those things that you feel whenever the campuses and everything were founded, you can understand why there was that need for an HBCU at that time and why there's still a need for HBCUs today.
So, how did your time at Tennessee State influence your worldview?
Yeah, I think it gave me a really well-rounded view. Again, being from rural West Tennessee was one perspective, and then coming to Tennessee State was a totally different perspective. And I think as I, matriculated through school and graduated, then it just gave me this viewpoint of there's so many differences in our world. I think it made me more accepting and able to really move through our world much easier, just because I had those two vastly different perspectives. But I think both aspects were very good for me. I couldn't complain about either one of them in any way. But just one of those to where when I left TSU, that it just gave me that sense of pride of knowing, you have a home to come back to, was a big thing. But also too, just knowing what TSU can do for everybody and what it has done for a lot of people in the past. I was fortunate to have an aunt and an uncle that actually attended and graduated from TSU, as well. So, it wasn't something that was foreign to me. And even for where I grew up, TSU came to play against my hometown college every year. So it was something that I had a relationship with for many, many years before even attending. TSU was kind of the place I knew I wanted to go, just from being around those type of interactions, even those one times a year, seeing them come play, the band, everything like that. That TSU was the only school I even applied to.
Oh, wow. What personal challenges strengthen your resilience?
I think really being able to understand how I need to be a person that really dictates my own life. I think those challenges of growing up in the rural area, it is very challenging sometimes in some areas, and there's things that are still out there, even growing up at that time that you don't want to have to deal with. But I think it makes you just that much tougher. It really shapes your future and makes you understand how you need to really move throughout your life and really make sure that you're okay. I think flipping that to then going to a Tennessee State and how that then really shapes your future is you understand the importance of connection, how you need to get along with people, how you need to build connections with other people, because you can't get through this life just simply on your own. You have to have some connections on some level to be able to get through life. And I think taking those lessons from growing up to then being at TSU to being in the workforce, then I think that's one of my stronger attributes is being able to build connections with others, to where I know I can call on other cities, they'll help me out. I have those relationships, and I think that's been something that really shaped how I view working in the world.
I think, and just help us understand this a little bit better, is in just understanding not just as you speak of your story, but in thinking about in going to Tennessee State University, which helped to expand your view of being so multifaceted, but it transcended so well, which we'll talk a little bit later about, but it transcended so well over into what you do as a city manager. Can you tell us how did that help you to be able to transition as to lead people that have to work with you to do all of those great things that you're doing now?
Yeah, I think for being at Tennessee State, then again, just the opportunities that were presented for me within my time at TSU. Like I said, starting with being the student manager within the cafeteria. Even though it's not the most glamorous job in the world, it's one of those to where you're dealing with all the students, and just that variety of people. So you have your seniors, you have your juniors, your sophomores, your freshmen. So you're dealing with just all the levels within the school of everybody that's attending, that's on a meal plan, or just simply coming to eat. And I think when you take some of those type of experiences, it really just helps you build those levels of how you're able to interact with different mindsets. It might not be necessarily all different types of people, but it's going to be different mindsets, because when you're a freshman and you're 18, you're there to conquer the world. You don't know any better. Nobody's told you yet that you can't do all these things, so you still believe you can still be Superman or Superwoman, versus that senior that has realized, I need to narrow my focus. I need to think about what I want to do next year, because I'm going to be out of school, I'm going to be working. And I think additionally, with being at Tennessee State, that I was fortunate to be one of the founding members of our chapter of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated, which then added another layer of being able to deal with people. So not only being in the cafeteria and managing that, to be able to deal with the different school levels. Now I'm dealing with different Greek organizations and having to manage through those situations. And I think it was just a great growing opportunity while I was there to be able to have those two different type of scenarios, to where I now interact with just practically everybody on campus, whether it be in the cafeteria dealing with students primarily, or dealing with an organization, dealing with other Greeks, and dealing with school leadership in that case. So you have to really be able to navigate dealing with just a lot of different personalities, and that I think was a big key for me when I left Tennessee State, that I learned.
So, what was the moment you knew government work was your calling?
Yeah, I think really, even though I was at Fulton County prior, I think when I got to the city of Lawrenceville, I think when I saw the opportunities that were out there, and I felt really comfortable. So probably within my first year being there, so getting into 2017, 2018, then I really saw that I felt like I was good at it. And I felt like whenever I have sort of that opportunity to just use my brain and just use the skills I have, and I wasn't being micromanaged, and they gave me all these opportunities, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can do great work. They don't even need to tell me what I need to do. I can go find things to do. I like, if you leave me for a day or so, I'll go find some things to do. And that type of opportunity just really told me that I have the skills to be able to do this at a high level. And that, whenever you don't need someone to direct your work every single day, or, you don't have a boss that's, have to come and tell you, well, hey, I need this and I need this. It's one of those, when you're driven in that way, that I felt like at that point I could be really successful in this.
So, how did your MBA shape your approach to leadership and operations?
Yeah, I think thinking about operations, it really gave a lot of information as far as sort of a Six Sigma approach to things, of how can you make things better. I think that's how I approach a lot of the operation always is, I know we're doing well, and it doesn't mean that we're not doing well, to look at your operation, but how can we do things just a little bit better so that we provide a better service, or we do it more efficiently, we save time, or there are processes we can combine. So I think the MBA from an operational aspect really helped me to take a look at how the operations runs, and being able to break that down and really understand, how do you look at improving operations and make things flow in a much better way. I think the MBA really helps you as far as leadership is concerned, because whenever you understand those management principles, those are the things that just really help you get an understanding and a grasp of how to lead people. You can't just always have a leader that's just dropped into a room and then, say, hey, go. You now have to lead everybody. I think there is a level of understanding that you do need to have of what does it mean to be a leader? How do you lead people? And also the big thing in leadership is, where are you trying to go?
Yes, sir. Let's transition through to your professional journey and your public sector foundations.
Yeah.
What was your first major role in public service, and what did it teach you?
Yeah, my first role within public service majorly was with Fulton County government, and with being in large organizations, I think some of the things I learned, and no knock to Fulton County and some of the larger organizations, but what I learned is that I didn't want to necessarily work in a humongous organization. The downside that you can have to working in places like a Fulton that are 5,000 employees is, they really want you to focus on the job you do. I think for me, that can be sometimes a little bit boring to be in one thing and not necessarily move about and do several different functions. But I think with being in large organizations, you're trying to keep the wheel spinning. So, you're a cog in that wheel, and they need you to really focus on being good at that thing you do. Was kind of my first major role being in that. But I think it was still a great experience and a great intro to being able to understand how government works and what comes with that.
So, just as you went from Fulton County to where you are now, can you tell us, and tell maybe some of the future people that may come to work under you? Tell us, how did that work, and how are you going to be able to help people to transcend into these positions? Because I know that public service is one that's really demanding, but you have to be meticulous.
Yeah, and I think with what I do currently, I do try to mentor a lot of people out in the field, whether they're in it and trying to progress, or when they're trying to break into it. So I do have quite a few friends that have moved throughout in different areas and various levels. And I think really with the understanding of getting in is, I tell people like this: get into public sector and really take the opportunity to just learn first. You might not walk into your ideal job necessarily upon entry, but there's always opportunity in public sector whenever you do get in and you get some experience, you build some connections, but really get in and start to understand what are the things that you do like, what are the things that you don't like about it, because you may be someone that wants to enter in procurement always. And you might get into procurement and you might not want to necessarily make that your career choice. But the great thing about being in public sector is even within your organization, there can be so many different opportunities that you need to understand what is it that I do like or don't like about my current field, and then getting an understanding of how I get to that place I do want to be. As you do climb the levels, because I do have 2 or 3 people that used to work for me that are city and county managers right now. And I think the big thing in kind of teaching them as a different aspect is how do you deal with pressure? How do you deal with pressure? How do you deal with people and elected officials, the pressure that brings to you? How do you stay calm and cool under that? Also understanding you don't have to have an answer immediately to every question. That is not your absolute responsibility. Your responsibility is to be able to understand how to get an answer to a question. So don't frustrate yourself with trying to come up with something just because somebody asked you a question. And so I think there's just so many aspects whenever you look at so many of these various roles that, when you're in, whether it be lower level staffer or whether you be at the top of the chart, is that you have to understand just some of these key aspects, learning how to deal with people, learning how to deal with pressure, learning how to meet deadlines is something else that's really important, because if you say you're going to do something and the citizens know this, they're expecting you to do it. So there's just those multitudes of things that when you walk in the door, you need to really take a second to think, is this for me? And can I do it? Because there is that public pressure. There are always open records, so people can request so many different things you've worked on. So just understanding, what to say, what not to say, when to say. And I think, I think some of those things, like I say, growing up with the elders and knowing that I did not have a speaking role whenever they were talking, is something that's important that does translate to now of, when do you need to be the person talking? When do you need to just sit there and listen and observe and take in whatever that information is? But I think it's a great opportunity out there for so many people out there to get into public service. And I'm always excited to help people get into public service or progress through the ranks of public service as much as I can.
Let me ask you this, because I know that there may be, a lot of these younger, up and coming young people, men and women that want to get into public service.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the mentality is a little bit different. How do you help them to tone whatever is happening that's not really professional, to really get into public service and to know what public service is?
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from, I think presentation standards of yourself are a little different now sometimes with younger people than what it was when I was a little bit younger. Even the difference of nowadays for me versus back then is, you had to wear a tie for everything. Whenever I first got into the workforce, that was the minimum requirement versus I don't know anybody that wears ties very often on just a regular day. But I think as far as, especially young people getting in, it is really about how you do present yourself. And you have to present yourself from day one in the best light. I think, sometimes some of the younger people I've met at conferences make fun of me because I will go with, a jacket and sometimes a tie. And, they're thinking, well, why are you wearing all this stuff to come to this random conference and sit through? And I was like, well, there might be somebody I meet for the first time today. And, that's what they're going to remember is, how they saw me. They don't need to see me looking ragged or not professional. And I think some of those things, just presentation simply, is an important aspect for young people getting into the field that is very different than whenever I broke into the workforce some years ago. And I think even with people that are my age is, don't get yourself lax and think that just because, I'm dressed like this, that you've got it made. You have to also be able to articulate thoughts. You have to be able to control anger and frustrations. Like I think people say, fix your face. So you have to be able to really work through those things and just really be stone faced and keep yourself calm, whatever that age, because that could be a challenge, I think, for everybody. to really sit there and get some bad news or hear something bad, and they, you know, have a look. And those are things that people pick up on, whether it be your appearance or whether it be some of those nonverbal cues that I think everybody needs to really work on and think through to understand this is how somebody's viewing you. And if it's their first time viewing you, that's what they're taking away. You know, there's not a second chance. So you really have to be on top of your game when it comes to just how people view you and how people think that you come across, or what they might believe you to be.
How did your experiences in Fulton County prepare you for your future leadership?
Yeah, I think with that, what I was doing in Fulton County was workforce development, and I had an opportunity to work with youth that were usually underprivileged. And I think really from there, I got a strong understanding of how you set an example. You know, again, being younger, you know, my dad being in leadership and being around elders, you know, they really understood how to set the example. So you saw, they showed you how they were going to do things. And I think really from that upbringing to them being at Fulton County, I understood with those youth that were in certain situations, I had to show them, you know, that there's better out there, that they can do these things, that, you know, yes, with a helping hand, you can get to a certain place. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect, but you have to have a starting point. And when you show people what's possible, then they might not have thought about that. And I think with Fulton County, that was something great that I had the opportunity to be able to do, is to really show people what's possible in your life and how you can do some things. And, you know, if you're able to go and, you know, you go from dropping out of school to getting your GED, that puts you at a different level. Go from that GED to getting your associates. That's a different level of eye opening. And then maybe they go on and get to their 4-year degree, so on and so forth. The difference in what that meant as far as job prospects, but really showing people what those paths were, was something that was, I think, special for me at Fulton.
So why is giving back so important to you? Because it, you know, I think when you're able, you know, again, you're leading by example, but what makes that the important thing of giving back to pull somebody else forward?
Well, I think that's what people remember you for. You know, you can have all the plaques in the world, and you can have all the awards, recognitions, all those things. But I think in some scenarios, to me at least, whenever you have sort of that tree of people that have come up behind you, that, you know, that can look and say, hey, you know, Derrick helped me to get to X point. You know, the hope is that you bring them up, and they turn around and they bring somebody up the ladder too. And, you know, whenever you keep on doing that, at a certain point, you've just built this huge tree of people that have all helped one another. And it's just a mindset, and it's just a community then of helpfulness that you're building, to where people aren't just thinking simply about themselves. They are first thinking about others, and they know that somebody had to help them get to a place. Now I need to make sure that I'm paying that forward to help somebody else get to the place they're trying to be. And I think that's just really important, just generally in life, is we're looking at how we can help people. So whether it be within my public service, whether it be through organizations like the fraternity, whether it be, you know, a board member with Swim Kids, of helping underprivileged youth be able to learn how to swim, you know, being able to really help people. These are these things that I think people remember more so. It's not those gifts you give them. It's, you know, being able to look back and say, you know what, if it wasn't for that helping hand that I got, I wouldn't have been able to get in that job. But without that helping hand, I wouldn't have been able to learn how to swim. I could have drowned if I didn't know how to do that. Without that helping hand from the fraternity, we wouldn't have got that community service that they provided for us. And I think as you just go down the line of that giving, that's just, I think, what I want to leave as a legacy, and what I want to be able to show to my kids as well.
What did you learn about community needs while working in Franklin County?
I think that we all are more similar than we are different. With being in Franklin County, it was me going from Lawrenceville, being in a major metro area, to being in a very rural area here in Georgia. And I think with learning what people need there's similar needs across everybody. I know sort of in our world today, we believe that, people over here need one thing and people over there need a completely different thing. And I think learning from that, the lesson would be that's not true whatsoever. We all are practically one and the same. We all have the same basic needs. We all desire those needs. And I think with being there, even though it was very similar to where I grew up in West Tennessee, so it wasn't just absolutely new to me. It was one of those things where understanding that, whether I help somebody in rural Georgia or whether I help somebody in metro Georgia, I'm still helping people. I'm still providing services. They still all have needs that are very similar. There might just be a dollar figure that's different associated to each of them. But I think with being there, it was one of those to where you just understand that they want the best for themselves and their families as well, just like anybody else out in the world. There's no difference in that. That's what they want. They're still just trying to figure out how to get there. And whenever you're in charge or in some type of leadership within those type of communities, especially they're looking to you because you're the kind of the top executive within the county. And they really are going to look to you for that guidance of how can we get better? What are the things that we do need without losing our community character?
How did your time in Lawrenceville shape your understanding of municipal operations?
Yeah, I think Lawrenceville was great for me. At that time we had a full service city, so they actually provided gas, electric, and water services. And I think it was a great opportunity with being in at that time because now you're touching every aspect of people's days. So you go home, of course, you have to have gas, electric, water. You still have all your basic services that were provided. And I think whenever I was there, it was just an opportunity to really understand the ins and outs of all forms of the government. When you have that many different services, you have that vast variety of people. Lawrenceville is a very diverse community. So I think with that, it was the opportunity to really understand, how to interact with people, how a government can really benefit everyone, and how you can be a part of that solution.
So, what leadership lessons did you carry from each city you served?
I think the biggest thing that I've carried every single place is that it's all about the people. I think just a fun thing, even for my current role in being City of Tucker, the staff gave me an award of the People's Champion. So it's one of those to where when you think about the people first and how you can help the people first, no matter where you go, you're going to find the solutions. The solutions are out there already. But when you really put people first, when you look at focusing on how you can help them, that's just the key whenever you're going into any of these municipalities or whatever the area is, whether it be large, small, rural, metro. Think about people first. Think about how you can help them. And that's usually been the biggest takeaway for me every place.
So, what does result-oriented leadership mean to you?
I think, it's kind of like something at a conference I was at, local government gets things done. And I think for myself, it's important getting things done. You can talk all you want to talk about how you can do things or what you would do. But I think at the end of the day, people want to see results. So I think really having measurable results, whether it be a project, so whether it be a road project, a dam project, any other type of capital project, people want to know that the money that they're putting in your hands to get this project done, you are delivering. And I think getting those type of results or making sure that, if you come in with a philosophy of we want our operations to be more efficient, find the way to be more efficient and get that done and have a measurable result to show that, we sped up a process by 2 days. So I know, for instance, being at Franklin County, getting things done, they were still working off a lot of paper at that particular time. So we had paper timesheets when I first got there. So we were processing 174 timesheets at that time every 2 weeks. And it probably took about 4 days to get payroll done. But I really came forward with that to let everybody on staff know and let the community know we wanted to do this in a more efficient manner. We don't want to take 4 days every 2 weeks to do payroll. That's wildly inefficient. That's 8 days out of a month. So I mean, that's 8 working days out of a 20-day working day month. That's a little bit tough. So we really wanted to have some goals. And I think a big goal with that was to get it more efficient. So I implemented a system and had to carry that load mostly myself, just because my payroll person had quit whenever we realized we had the amount of work we had to do. But I carried that while still processing payroll to get us to a digital system that they still have today, to where we could basically process payroll in about a half day. So whenever you get into that kind of point, that's something very measurable that you can show. We're not just spending money to say that we're spending money and trying something. I'm showing you an absolute result. We went from 4 days processing to a half day to about a day. I'll give it even up to a day, but still, that's considerable. When you talk about being 8 days out of a month to going down to 2 days.
So, how do you approach problem solving in complex government environments?
I think you have to really know your team. I think that having a good team around you is your first step, is really hiring good people that understand their positions and their backgrounds. But I think from there is understanding how to solicit the right kind of advice from them whenever you get into some of those more complex problems, because it could be a problem that involves multiple departments. And so whenever you have that be the case, you need to hear from multiple people on how they would solve it. But once you've heard from people, how does that mesh together? So you have to be the glue. You have to be the person that's going to take those individual solutions and make that into a solution that puts all those pieces together and comes up with one final total solution that's going to solve your problem. I think you have to really look at complex problem solving from the aspect. You have to take chances, I think, and sometimes in government. I think that it's okay to mess up. It's okay to be wrong. Of course, you want to get the best information you can and you want to make the best decision. But I think you can't be scared to make a decision and really look at what those options are and use your best judgment on how to do that. So I think when you're looking at that type of problem solving in municipal government, it's not about being right every single aspect of the way. It's about really coming up with the best solution that's going to work, and not being afraid to really put yourself out there and come up with some creative solutions even, because it's okay to ask for some level of forgiveness. Now, of course, you don't want to spend $1 million and you lose $1 million. We're not saying go through and be reckless. But whenever you are looking at those solutions, finding things that can work and be the most benefit to the community, and just understanding that if you do mess up or you get things wrong, understanding that you take ownership of those and then you move forward.
Now, as you say that, because I definitely understand where you're going when you say that, but let's think about this for a second, because I mean, I know that when you're working for the government, it doesn't matter if it's local, county, city, state, or federal. Mm-hmm. Is that there's just a lot of little tedious things that go by that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah.
How do you get your people really prepared for, let's say, the situation where maybe a step or two may have been missed? And, some people are just harder on themselves than others. How do you get them to that comfort of knowing that, okay, this is what happened, you understand, you want to move on? How do you get them to feel better about that?
Yeah, and I think what I've always taught within all of my staff is publicly, I'm going to fall on the sword. We never criticize staff in public. If staff did make a mistake, I messed up, then it's me that messed up. Now, when we get behind closed doors, I'll talk to them. We'll work through that, but I always tell staff, I'm not worried about you making a mistake necessarily. If you do make a mistake, I want to know as soon as possible so we can try to correct whatever we're doing. But I want them to really understand that, ask yourself these certain lines of questions every time you're going through a process. Ask yourself the questions that you believe either a council or an elected member or a citizen or another peer would ask you whenever you're going through these, and ask yourself those questions so that way you're really trying to address as much as you can. Now, of course, you can't ask yourself every possible question that's out there, but also don't hamstring yourself by not moving forward and being afraid of failure that you're not going to do something. Again, as long as we're not getting to something catastrophic, I can live with that all day, every day. And I tell people, because I've had employees that have come to me crying, saying they've messed up something, and like I told them, well, what were you trying to do? Were you giving your best effort in trying to do that and not being reckless? Okay, fine, not a problem. I'll figure out some solution to let them know we need to prolong this process just a little bit, and we need to clean up some things. Perfectly fine, not an issue. But I want them to understand that they're the CEOs of their areas. I can't walk into every area and just simply make a decision with limited knowledge. I am familiar with every department and every aspect that we do operate. But I'm not in those day to day in that type of way that I could just open up their computer and say, oh, well, here's the obvious solution. You're the CEO of your department or your area of responsibility. So I'm relying on you to be able to go through and do all the due diligence needed, make the best decision, and come with a recommendation. Now, if it's getting kind of tricky and it's very complex, I'm happy to jump in at that point, and we can pull in whomever we need to pull in to be able to help come up with that solution. But if it's just day to day, this is all you. This is yours, and you have discretion to be able to call for help whenever you need help.
So what misconceptions do people often have about local government work?
I think sometimes the misconception can be that they're lazy, or that they're just wasting taxpayer money. It's one of those to where you could think that you're paying more taxes than what you might actually be paying for those services. Typically, a lot of these services actually cost more money than what we pull in for certain services, especially if it's residential related. So I think those can be some big misconceptions, and those aren't things that you really ever go through and correct people on necessarily, but just getting an understanding that, to whomever has those misconceptions, we're doing the best we can for you. We want to provide a high level of service. We don't want to just simply give you some mediocre level or low level of service just because you're paying low taxes. We still want to give you the same high level of service no matter what your tax figure is. And I think there can be sometimes misconceptions that government people don't care, but I would say people strongly do care about their jobs. They're very passionate about that. They want to own their jobs. They want to do the best they can for everybody out there within their roles to really get things done and make that impact. Everybody that's getting into government service, we have to remember, is getting into it because they want to help somebody. And, whenever at the end of the day, they're helping somebody, they feel good about their job and they want to do the best they can to deliver that product.
So how do you balance policy, operations, and community expectations? Because in asking that question, I know that this is more so with dealing not just with the community, but with people sometimes personally, that come to your office.
Yeah.
How do you deal with those situations? How do you balance that?
I think there has to be, I think you kind of start with expectations. I think that's really the reality setter, because there could be a lot of different expectations, especially within local government, because, if I came from Washington, D.C., and then I moved to rural Georgia, well, there's a difference in expectation of what I've seen as far as what the local government does for me. And I've had some of those to where even when I was at Franklin County, I had a gentleman that was coming from, I believe, Pittsburgh. So he went from Pittsburgh to come to Franklin County to being in a small area. And, it's just a different level of service that's going to be provided there. And I think when you're looking at the policies have to fit not only what the people do want, but what you're able to provide. And I think that does come a lot from the type of municipality you're in. Because if you're in those major metro areas, of course, you have the resources to be able to do a lot more things. It's very easy. But when you are in some of the more rural areas, you don't have those resources. So you can't just say that we're going to, either turn around something in a day, because there might be one person that processes that also does 2 or 3 other functions. And I think it's really about setting those expectations when someone comes to your office or somebody calls you on the phone to say, I understand that you came from Miami, and I know that they did it a certain way, but we're not Miami, and we can't do it that way. But we do want to do the best we can for you. But it's just going to take us a little bit longer to do that. And I think as long as you're very upfront with setting expectations in all of those situations, I think that people usually do understand that they might not be happy. It might not be the answer they're looking for, but I think people can really appreciate when you are giving them an honest and straightforward answer about what realistically can happen.
So, what role does humility play in public service?
I think it plays a very hefty role. Arrogance doesn't get you anywhere. Wanting to be in the spotlight doesn't get you anywhere. My belief, and that's just my belief, is that it's best for us to work in quiet, boring government. It's not the sexy thing to be out there and be in the newspaper every day or be on TV every day. But at the end of the day, people want that result. So as long as we're operating, we're doing the things we're supposed to do. I don't need any fanfare for any of those things. It's just like even being in council meetings, I would tell my boss, I don't want any credit for anything. And I'm fine with that. You can give the credit to the staff. I'm accomplished. I'm okay. I want them to be able to elevate and be recognized more so than myself. But I think whenever you are a little bit arrogant, that's when people start putting a target on your back, because then now you believe you're bigger than the system. You're bigger than the things that we're trying to accomplish. And it can be very difficult when it's going to come a day where you do maybe make a mistake, or you say something wrong, or you mess up. And all of a sudden, all the people that were clapping for you when you were on the newspaper, when you were on TV, they're looking at you, with daggers, and they have been waiting for this moment. So yes. I do believe you have to just really have a level of humility and just go in, just focus on doing your job. The accolades can always come whenever you're just simply getting the work done.
I think, again, this is what makes you such a distinguished leader, because I think when people are able to be humble, as it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing in life, it's from leadership to whatever you're doing, it's the humility that makes the difference, because that's what makes you the real person. Yeah. So when you think about that and you think about your leadership style and you as a leader, what kind of example are you setting, or do you want to set for people to understand?
Yeah, I think with my leadership style and how I approach it is, I want to see everybody succeed. That is number one goal. However, we got to get there, whatever your skill level is. I'm happy to train. I'm happy to teach you whatever we need to teach you. If I need to call other cities to help teach you, I've done that. Whatever it's going to take for us to get people in the best position to be successful are the things I want. I want them to really think about almost standing on my shoulders. I don't want them to fight to get to tread water. Let's stand on my shoulders. Let's get you above water. Let's really get you where you need to be, an understanding of your job. Let's get you operating at a high level. Let's get you the training that you need. I don't think it's been too many times I've ever said to somebody when they've requested to go up to a training from me that I say, no, we don't want to do that. Now maybe if they're asking to go across country and it's an expensive trip, okay, or international trip, okay, maybe that. But as far as just regular training and things that they can do that are local, that are cost efficient and aren't glaring to where they're irresponsible, there's not going to be a time that I'm going to say no to that. So I think really putting people first in that way to get them to their goals. Usually as I meet with staff, I want to understand what their goals are. And I tell them, well, if that's what your goal is, this is how you can get there. If you want to do that, I can help you get there. But we're going to have to focus on these things and get these things done. And I think really as you walk in as a leader, when you're putting those people first and really making the effort to really show them that you care about them, you care about their goals, you care about what they're doing, then that's really important. I think the other thing within that is you can't be afraid to lose people to their goals. People are afraid to have turnover sometimes, and they think, well, I've trained them for a year and now they've left to go do this other great job that fits within their goals. And it's like, well, okay, that's great. If that's what they wanted to do, then that's what we have to do. And of course, it does sting a little bit sometimes to have people leave you, but when they do leave you because they're pursuing their goals and you help them get there, you can take a breath after a second and say, okay, I hate that they're leaving, but they have an opportunity to improve their lives. They have an opportunity to reach their goals, and you can be proud of that.
Let's transition over to your work here as the assistant city manager and your municipal operations. What does a typical day look like for an assistant city manager?
Yeah, I think for me, my day comes with a variety. I think one of the key constants of my day is meetings. So we are in a lot of meetings to try to work through and find solutions. But I think probably for me, the big thing is just the interaction with the overall staff. Something that I've always made a habit of doing with staff over these many years is I usually circle the building and go speak to every staff member humanly possible every single morning. There's probably maybe a few exceptions here and there, and trust me, if they don't see me for a day or two, I usually get somebody coming and being like, "Hey, have you been here? We hadn't seen you." So I think that's one of the first things I like to do is really making sure I interact with staff and just kind of get the day going and set the tone in that type of way. I think following that, it is usually a lot about planning meetings, whether we're looking at real estate purchases, whether it be we're looking at changing our staffing structure, whether it be looking at some of the long range planning. Those are a lot of things that I spend a lot of time doing every day. With some of the departments that report to me specifically, then I spend a lot of time with those, like being with our parks and recreation, looking at programming, especially as we're nearing the summer. That is our big time of the year with summer camps, looking at finance, because this is also budget time. So looking at the budget and how we need to flow through the budget. But those are a lot of the ways that my day flows, is really just a lot of forward planning and how we're going to do things, or how we need to do things better.
So how do you ensure alignment between city council goals and operational execution?
Yeah, and I think with that especially is really, and we do have council retreats to really establish those goals. So we actually just had a council retreat last month. And the way that I have found is most effective is we had a council retreat at the end of March, followed by a staff retreat about 2 weeks later. And what we're able to do with that is take our directors and deputy directors and really transition all those thoughts that the council had to the leadership of the departments. And once everybody's on the same page about what those council goals are and how we're going to get there, we're able to take that and translate that then to the staff. So once everybody is clear, we are clear on our goals, we're clear about what the plan is, we're clear of what we're doing. It's really about communication. I think at the end of the day, and just really being willing to talk to council and make sure they really hash out what is your vision, what are your goals, what do you want to see. If you just simply tell us that, we can tell you what we need to do as a staff to be able to get there.
So what are the biggest challenges facing municipal governments today?
I think biggest challenge is that you have a political environment in some ways, especially at the manager level, to where people don't want to be in it. You have a lot of people that are retiring from it. You have a lot of people that don't stay in it long. And I think with that, it's a huge challenge, because as you don't have that leadership, then what's the course of your organization? You don't have somebody that's guiding it, that's knowledgeable in all cases. So it can be very challenging, I think, nowadays with just sort of that climate of how do we get people to attract to the field? And even if it's not management, is it just with staff level, director level, how do you get people to come to the field? how do you get people to stay in the field? Because there are the political pressures of elected officials. There's the political pressures of your residents, because there is a little bit more demand nowadays than what it used to be. It used to just be, hey, they delivered these services and I'm good. But now it's, well, I want the services like what this city has because I have a friend over there or I live there and they used to get this. Why aren't we able to do this? So I think it is partly education, being able to really teach people about what your government does, because there are differences, though we may all take in forms of taxes, we may all take in forms of fees. The way that we're able to utilize that is very different because not everybody is built in the same type of way. So I think those can be the big challenges for local gov right now.
So how do you approach strategic planning for growing cities like Tucker? Because I know that when you came there, they were going through some transitions, especially trying to get ready for like major events and just grow the city out.
Yeah, that is my absolute jam, is being in strategic planning mode. That's something that I love doing because being able to really have these council retreats and these type of things that are about strategic planning, we do get them facilitated, but usually the agendas are what I develop. And I think with that, it's really about understanding where we are and understanding what the end goal is of how to get to that place. So whenever you have a council that maybe is trying to figure it out, that can be okay, but you just really need to be able to ask the right questions to be able to get them to an end result. And eventually, as you're asking those right questions, it's going to lead to some answers that tell you, well, this is what we're actually trying to do. What is your vision? And you have to really be able to sit in a room and say, this is what our vision is, because that's going to really tell you basically what is it you're trying to be. And if you don't know what you're trying to be, then you kind of are throwing baloney at the wall in a way. But I think for where we've gotten to is we have established a little bit more vision. We need to kind of parse that just a little bit, but we have gotten a better understanding of that. And I think from there, that's really good, then trickle down to set all those goals, to set how we get to those goals. So that's the fun part of local gov, is being able to really work through those processes and see when you go from maybe not understanding the what to finding that end result.
So what does operational excellence look like in local government?
I think the organizational excellence is we are able to function at a high level, every single department, every single day. Everything is consistent. There isn't a process that is different as people come into the building. We're able to do it with a smile. Customer service is at a premium. And I think from there, we are able to really then accomplish things. That's the operational aspect of it. From a capital aspect, I believe being able to get projects completed efficiently, under budget or on budget, from the capital and the building aspect of that are the ways that we should operate as a city. And when you're doing those things very consistently, then you are usually operating at a high level. And, I think that's when people just look at you as an organization and think they know what they're doing. I have no questions about like how things work, because all I know is whenever we say something, they get it done, and they're doing those things. So I think that's really when you're looking at operational excellence, how you get there.
So how do you evaluate whether a city service is effective or not?
I think from there, it's about timing. It's about you can actually really work to get yourself feedback in the moment, because something as simple as someone coming in to get permits, you can evaluate that in the moment. It's not a bad thing to stand outside and as somebody's finishing up getting the permit or going through part of that process, well, how long did it take you to do this? Was it hard? You can find out the difficulties to that. And I think whenever you are just really looking at evaluating your processes, are we getting communications out quick enough? Does some type of major event happen? Are we getting communication out in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour? How long does it take us to realize things are happening before we react? Are we proactive versus reactive? I think as you go down that type of list of questions to understand, what is our stance? If you're in a reactive stance, there can be situations where maybe a reactive stance is appropriate because you can't be in front of everything. But, are there times where we're reactive where we need to be proactive? And I think just as you evaluate the operation overall, are you staying on track with those things and really guiding yourself to understand, are we hitting the mark on those or are we not? How do we course correct to get to the right place?
So with all the growth that you guys are having out there in Tucker, and many things that you've been implementing since you've been there, how are those growing pains going? I mean, what is the feedback that you're getting back from your communities?
Yeah, I think so. I think since we last spoke, we did open up our town green. It was a big project that we had, an $8 million project. And I think from that, even a growing pain within that as a thought is, how do we then complete a project while then maintaining that project? And that's been a growing pain that we've had to adjust to. What does the maintenance look like as we do complete capital in some of these larger projects? Because you don't want to complete a project and then it becomes run down in a year. So I think that's been something we've really had to learn how to better plan for, so that as we do complete them, we don't have to go back and do touch-ups. We're just steadily maintaining them, so that as people enjoy it on day 365 the same way they enjoyed it day one.
So what systems or processes have you improved since joining Tucker?
Ooh, I think number one has been finance budget process. I think we were a little bit clunky whenever I first got there, to where it was confusing. There were aspects of it that just flat out didn't work. The timing was a little too tight. So even something as simple as the budget process itself, I kind of let it go for the first year because I wanted to see how it operated. But once I saw how it operated, then I kind of took that over to generate what our process was going to be, so that we could give ourselves better time, and that we'd have better opportunity to teach everybody about the budget, and it works more smoothly for us. So that's something we're going through right now. But within this process has been fantastic because we are in no way rushed, versus last year. It felt like as we got to the start of every week, we were in a rush for some aspect of the budget, versus this year, there's really no rush. We're right on track, and we still have plenty of time. I think as far as how we deliver financials, we were able to get a distinguished budget award within finance. So how we deliver a budget, how it's understandable, was something that was huge that we changed. So that was their first distinguished budget award that they had ever received, similar to like I did at Lawrenceville, getting their first distinguished budget award. I think with also just meeting structure and being more efficient in how we're utilizing our time is something that we've been able to do at a much higher level, so that we aren't in ongoing meetings for hour upon hour on the same topic. Let's finish. If we need to reconvene another time, but let's finish, get a break so we can get work done. And then the other thing that I think has been our biggest impact has been with our council retreats and staff retreats. They've never done a staff retreat before, just a couple weeks ago. And then with our council retreats, formatting with that, that's been something that I developed. So it was a little bit more of staff and directors reporting what their department was doing, but we've changed that to be a little bit more strategic planning oriented. The staff retreat did have aspects of team building within that. So it's been a little bit better with those type of processes to really show, really reveal the values and things that we need to be doing, but also with some of those other processes just to make us more efficient and make it to where we are valuing our time and utilizing it to the best of our ability.
So how do you build trust with department heads and staff?
I think you really have to be understanding. I tell people, even though my title does say one thing, I'm just a guy. I am just a guy. They're the people that deserve the credit. They're the ones that do the work. And I really try to go in from that relatable aspect. And I think too, from building trust, it's about just relating to people. It's not just me walking by someone to check their work. It's probably pretty rare that I'm walking by somebody to really check their work, as much as I'm just interacting with staff and department heads to just understand who they are, try to know something about them. So I could probably say relatively, I know at least a little something about everybody. It does get a little hard to retain at a certain point as we continue to grow. But I do try to make sure that I know something about everybody, or at least I know what I can talk to them about whenever I'm circling the facility, to be able to know something about their family or about their work day or whatever it may be, just so that you can always have a conversation with anybody. And whenever you can do that, that really builds a lot of trust with everybody within the staff. That they know that you're just not there to come and check and make sure that they're working, or checking to see what's on their screen to make sure they're not just messing around for the day.
What role does data play in your decision making?
I think it's very large. You want to have all the data you could possibly have. There's always cost analysis. There's always return on investment type of analysis. When you're looking at all these things, they're not, again, the end all be all, because, being in local government or government generally, you're not in it to make a profit. So even though we might build a facility, or just like we built this park, it's not a park that we're saying, well, we spent this amount of money because we're going to make this amount of money next year. It's one of those long-term investments, and data would show us for that we needed a place where people could really gather that was close to downtown. And further data has now shown us that we have a lot of visitors that come there. They're actually using it. So the purpose that we put it in for is backed up by data right now.
How do you maintain transparency in government operations?
I think you're open and honest, utilizing things like your website. Whenever people have multiple questions about something, then, if you can put up some common questions on your website so people don't have to ask, then I think those can be big things. And putting things up that people haven't asked about, as long as they are understandable. You don't want to put things that are too complex to where people are now just asking more questions about the topic because it's not understandable. But I think utilizing your social media as much as you possibly can really helps to make it transparent. Something fun that I used to do when I was at Franklin County was I did a video series, always a County Manager Friday, to where I would just go on and usually have about 2 or 3 things that I would talk about that were going on within the community, just so people were aware. Maybe they were aware anyway, but maybe they weren't. So you're probably hitting somebody within the audience that didn't know something. And that's just good, because now they know, they have opportunity to know. You can't always hit everybody in that audience, but in between the newspaper, in between our website, in between those actions, we've given every opportunity we can for you to have as much knowledge as you could have.
Let's transition over to your community initiatives and your public impact. What community initiatives are you most proud of supporting in Tucker?
I think connectivity. I think that when you talk about people being able to get around, yes, most everybody has a car to a good degree, but the difference in being able to walk places versus you must drive every single place, it can be huge. And not everybody can just simply say, I'm going out for a drive to go to X place. So whenever they do have walkability, and it's connected to things like a grocery store, or it's connected to a park, or things they can just simply walk to without the pressure of a drive. And of course, with gas prices being what they are nowadays, people don't want to just go out to drive unless they know they are going from A to B, for purpose. So I think connectivity is something that we've been really good about working to develop. Our trail master plan and the things that we're going to do with that are going to be really important aspects to really help the community.
So how do you ensure that growth remains sustainable and community-centered?
I think that we do have to also get that feedback from the community of what type of place they believe they want to be. And if that matches with council goals and what we're able to do, then, have an education about what that means. I think we want to make sure that, we aren't just simply approving every single housing unit that comes in. We want to be strategic. We want to think about what that does mean as a community, because if you all of a sudden are approving thousands of apartments, that does change your dynamic considerably. So I think we want to be responsible in that growth and make sure that, we're getting the type of growth that is going to produce and still blend in with our current dynamics.
Tell us about your community outreach since you started at Tucker to now. What has that been like?
Yeah, I think we have more community meetings actually, to where we've sort of said with certain levels of projects that we want to really designate those to be the ones that we have a community meeting. We're doing more mailers, so certain projects that impact very specific areas, we're sending out letters to be able to communicate with those communities. I think we just had a project we just sent out about 300 letters last week, just so that we can communicate better, because we don't want situations to where people are surprised by things. And I think with this approach to outreach, we're able to reach more people. And again, you're not going to always be able to reach every single person because not everybody's reading the paper, not everybody is looking at your website, not everybody's on Facebook, not everybody's even checking the mail. But we want to give ourselves the best opportunity to reach as many people as possible. And at the end of the day, if you did not receive that news, then we would unfortunately at that time have to tell you all the methods that we have tried to contact you. But there's only so much you can do outside of knocking door to door.
So, what does preserving local character mean in practical terms?
Yeah, I think that it's about really not changing what the outlook of the community is. So I think for Tucker in particular, we have a nice old school downtown. We wouldn't want to, at that point, you have your shops on each side and you have your main street. You wouldn't want to, right behind those shops, have like a 500-person apartment complex. That would change the character. You wouldn't want to have some big box store that's down there. That would again change the character. You want to only zone that and allow things that are going to still conform with what our current viewpoint is. There could be a place for all of those type of developments, but you really want to look at your character areas and say, with this type of project or this type of zoning, does it allow something that is out of character? Or does it allow something that really fits in that? So instead of 500 apartments, I believe we've got an approval for 58 townhomes that are downtown. So not overwhelming, but something that does still get people that are right by our town green, right by the downtown, and still very accessible. So, you have to really look at it in that type of way and build your character to where it's all going to match. It's not something that looks like it should not be there.
So, how do you engage residents in meaningful dialogue about city priorities?
I think whenever you have, just even with your regular council meetings, you have opportunity for getting feedback from citizens. So those are the great opportunities, since they essentially have an open mic that they can come and speak to the council, they can speak to staff, just of understanding what they're seeing out there. And that's usually the time where people really do come out. Our elected officials do have their own individual meetings, town halls relative, so that they do get that feedback and relay that back to staff as well. But just being outside, if you're walking downtown, usually a lot of us are recognizable. So, whenever we're downtown, people do stop us and or be in an event, they'll tell us, if something's working, if something's not working. And that's good feedback to have. Because you don't want to continue to do things that aren't working and think that you're doing such a great job, but people are like, you know what, I don't know why they're doing this. So just trying to get any method of that. And of course, there's Facebook that you monitor as well, but take that with a grain of salt. So there's a lot of ways that you're monitoring for some type of feedback, because you want to do what people actually feel is impactful.
Let's transition over to vision, future, and legacy for you. Can you tell us what is your long-term vision for the city of Tucker?
I think for me, it's about something that a place that's connective, welcoming, and inviting to people, that does still have some of that relative small town charm. I think that whenever you look at Tucker, even though it is one of the larger cities, it's getting to a mid-sized city with it being at about 38,000 people. It is still something that you go downtown. The downtown still really does look like sort of those old school downtowns with shops and restaurants and things of that nature. And I think, to me, that's what we want to always preserve. That's what we want to be our centerpiece. And people will say, when I go to Tucker, I'm going there because I want to go eat at X restaurant. I want to go eat at Matthews downtown on Main Street.
What innovations do you believe will shape the future of municipal government?
I think right now the hot topic is AI. There's so much opportunity with AI, and I think everybody's still trying to get a grasp on it exactly because it's so new that nobody knows exactly what it'll do for you. But I think that it's something that can really help with shaping how government works, and I think it does have some efficiencies in some areas. Because it's an opportunity to where, if you have AI, even a simple chat GPT, you can translate things, just like with Google Chat and things of that nature. So that can be a great service to be able to have. I think that whenever you're trying to just communicate better, then it can properly communicate for you. But I think we do have to be careful about how we use it, how much we use it, and the reliability of it. So, it's just things to investigate over these years with it being a little bit newer, that I think it is good, but I think we just need to make sure we have a full understanding of it.
How do you see the role of assistant city manager evolving in the next decade?
I think that your assistant city managers of the world are your people that they are your core of operations. I think they give your city manager the opportunity to really be the face of the organization, be out in the field, meeting with people. I think that your assistants are the people that are able to really dive into the operation. And usually a lot of your assistants are people that have come from being maybe a director within the operation more recently. So they do have a great understanding and are able to really just dive in and really be that shield that protects the operation and be the people that drive the betterment of the operation.
Before I ask this next question, I just want to tell you this. I really think that as in listening to your work and these things that you're doing, I'm just wondering, are there plans for you to go higher into city, county, and state government?
Maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll get back into the top job. But but I'm happy. I'm happy in my role now, so it's a lot of fun, and no rush for me to make any moves.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask that question because, I'm just listening to you and the work that you're doing from the first time to now. It's so polished and it's so refined.
Oh, thank
And
you.
it's some things that, a lot of cities, especially some of the medium to maybe larger cities and so forth, don't have that same connection that you're providing,
Yeah, true. True. Yeah, it is one of those things to always think about, and when the right opportunities do present themselves, you could just judge that whether it's worth it or not. In my case, and it's one of those you never know because things happen every day, and so the opportunities present themselves, and you just have to really weigh that to think, is that a better opportunity? Because I would say the grass is not always greener.
That's true. I agree with that.
So you have to be careful. You got to be really judicious about how you are putting yourself out there, because I read every so often somebody I know out there that's stepping down or that's fired or a contract's not renewed and this, that, the other. So you have to be careful.
Yeah. What advice would you give to young professionals entering public service?
The sky is the limit. Get in, learn about as many areas as you can. I would tell somebody, if you can work in a city that would allow you to really promote from within, no matter what area you get into to start, look at other areas. So if you did a couple years in, just say, code enforcement, it would be opportunity once you've done those couple years in code enforcement to look at, I don't know, being in finance, if you can do that, or whatever department that may be. But I think the more well-rounded you are, the more opportunity can present itself later. It can be fine if you do go to one department and you stay in that department and grow throughout. That's fine too. But I think from my experience, being well-rounded, being able to understand the different departments makes a big difference, because then as you are climbing to those other levels and they're asking you those questions about, well, how does X work? Well, you're not saying, well, I never dealt with X. You're able to say, at least on some level, that you've dealt with it, you understand it to a degree. And when you're getting to some roles like these, nobody's looking for you to walk in and operate it. They just want to make sure you understand generally what needs to happen so that you can ask the right questions to all the staff and the director of what does need to happen.
What do you believe communities need most from their local leaders?
I think they need, well, I think they need transparency, communication. I think that when you're looking at local gov in a lot of aspects, everybody needs a place to gather. I think that those type of spaces being created is something that's important because, you know, we talked about earlier community and what community meant way back when versus now. And, you know, when you don't have those opportunities for community now, then yes, people do stay holed up or they're going to another community that does have it. And just within your own community, that's the ideal place to have that and build that because it's where you are, it's where you live. So if you're having to travel, and I hear people talk about this, that they're traveling across a couple cities to go to another city, to go to their events or to go to their, you know, things that are creating community. Well, you know, it's a little disheartening because then at that point, it's like, well, you might as well move there because you're more connected to that place than you are to your home. So I think those are big things that can be a big focus for local gov now and our leaders.
How do you hope your work impacts future generations?
I hope that one day when people see the work that I've been able to do, that they're inspired to know that they can do it too. You know, I came from a small town, and you know, West Tennessee, you know, I think is one of the great places that's provided a whole lot of successful people. For myself, my parents, you get Isaac Hayes, Justin Timberlake, you know, a pretty good list of people that have come out of West Tennessee that have been successful. But I think just when people go back and look at the work that I've been able to do, I hope that they see somebody that was dedicated to service, somebody that was dedicated to their field, somebody that gave their all. And at the end of the day, well, when I do hang it up a long time from now, then they see somebody that made an impact.
What legacy do you want to leave in the cities you've served?
I want those to be places that whenever I return, people are happy to see me. And they say that, you know, man, we really miss that guy. I think it's just a simple kind of legacy thing out of that. But I think realistically, I want those communities to really look back, and whether they can absolutely accredit it to me or not, because people forget and time passes. But I think whenever I'm able to drive back to those places and I look at the things, I want to be able to point to my kids and be able to say, your dad did that.
What does community sightwardship mean for you personally?
Community what?
I'm sorry, community stewardship.
Oh,
What
gotcha.
does that mean to you personally?
I think it's about being responsible with the community as if you own it. Every penny you own, everything you're doing, you own, you perform it as if you own it. I think whenever you are being responsible and you are a good steward of either the funds or the people, you're guiding people in the right type of way. You're showing integrity. You're doing the right things all the time, so that people know to follow you. They know that you are the leader, and they are willing to follow you because they know you're going to get things done for them.
How do you stay motivated in a field that often goes unrecognized?
I never lack for motivation. I am driven to get up every single day and be happy about getting up so that I can accomplish goals, because there's nothing better than checking off things on a list of things that I have to do for the day. There's not been a day that I wake up and don't want to do that. I think whenever I finally maybe get to that point, that's when it's time to put in the paperwork and retire. But I think my motivation is just knowing that I'm doing the best work that I can do, and I'm doing impactful work. So every day I wake up and feel that, I'm excited to go to work.
Final question. What is the message you want people to take from your journey?
I think that there's not a straight line path. I think that just because you're not successful, or maybe you are successful to a degree in a field, I think finding the right thing for you is the most important thing. I worked in the private industry, and I did well, but I think when I got to the private sector, I found my passion. I found the thing that I'm really good at, and I think that's what I would want for everybody. Find the thing that you're passionate about. Find that thing that still delivers, and you can make money in anything as long as you're passionate about it and you do it well.
So, in closing, what are some words of wisdom and encouragement that you have for our audience, as well as how to connect with you via your social media, go to your website? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think big things for me is, wake up every morning and be great. There's no better time than today to be able to do that. Like I mentioned, if you're interested in being in public service, or if you're in public service, I am happy to connect with anybody. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find me through the city of Tucker, through their website. I'm on there under our administration and government, the city manager's page. But I'm happy to help anybody that's in government or looking to get into government. Please feel free to reach out to me, because I think it's very important that we have people that want to be in it. I think other passions that I do have, like I said, I'm a board member for Swim Kids, teaching underprivileged youth how to swim. I think it's something that's also important. Again, just always in my theme of giving back, that are really great things. And then the other thing that I hope to give back to is that we have started our podcast, myself and my wife, that we are going to be dropping our first episode. It should be next week, actually. We had a slight delay since the last time I was on, but we are up and running, have an intro. 10 years apart, one heart, is our podcast about our journey and the things that we do. And luckily for both of us being in public service, we both have that heart and that passion for giving, and we just want to pour into other people and give to other people.
What's the name of the show again?
10 years apart, one heart.
Are you guys on YouTube yet?
Yeah. So we just have a small intro on YouTube, but we'll be doing some recording this weekend. Actually, I'll send you our graphic.
Okay, because definitely subscribe to your channel and listen.
Awesome.
So before I close, I want to do a closing monologue, for the show, as well as just chat with you about a couple of things when I close the show.
Sure.
But I want to say to you first, I definitely appreciate you coming back, and it's more than awesome to see you continually successfully strive higher, as you're transitioning from one place to the next and making the difference that you're making in that community in Tucker. Because I can remember when I first moved here that it was pretty much really a non-existent place.
Yeah.
And so to see it now, because I actually have some clients out there,
okay.
and it really looks different. It really does. And
Absolutely.
I can see that, for what's being built there is something that's worth exploring, but it's also, I'm sure it's a happy place for those people that are there now.
Yes.
So in closing with this monologue, I want to say this to you and to the audience. Tonight, we had a privilege of hearing from a leader who understands that public service is not about spotlight, it's about stewardship. Derrick C. Turner represents a generation of municipal leaders who bring discipline, strategy, and heart to the work of building communities that thrive. In a world where trust in institutions is fragile, Derrick reminds us that integrity still matters, that transparency still matters, that excellence still matters. He shows us that leadership is not just about making decisions, it's about making a difference. It's about ensuring that every resident, every neighborhood, and every voice is seen, heard, and valued. Family, thank you for joining us for another powerful episode of America in Black and White. Until the next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay committed to building the communities we deserve. Thank you all, and you all please have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow for another great show.